Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. Today you join me in the 2024 facelift Kia Picanto. This is the 2025 model year car and it's had a major refresh for this model year, and I'm here to tell you all about it and how it stacks up to its key rivals. So before we get into it, let's have a little look at the model range. Now the range starts from about 15 grand here in the UK, which is one of the cheaper cars that you can buy new now, pitted only against things like the Dacia Sandero, Toyota Aygo X, Hyundai i10 and Suzuki Ignis. They're kind of the key rivals. So the entry-level car is called the 2, and unfortunately it comes with halogen headlights, which I think is a bit of a letdown for a 2024 model year car. Now, apart from that though, the spec is fairly generous. So it comes with heated mirrors, 8-inch Apple CarPlay screen as standard, this 4.2-inch display in front of me, which kind of imitates a full display, which we'll get onto in a little bit. Also comes with rear parking sensors and rear camera as standard, which is pretty good, and automatic lights and electric windows all round. So it could be a lot worse really at that price point. It's one of the cheaper cars that you can buy new, and also one of the only cars left in its class really. As I say, there's a couple of key rivals there, but not many small city cars like this around anymore. Step up to the GT line spec and you get some sportier exterior styling. It's a couple of grand more, about 17,000. Cruise control, also tinted windows, some rear charging ports in there as well, 16-inch alloys, LEDs front and rear, which are really nice, folding electric mirrors, and this artificial vegan leather interior. Unfortunately, still manual climate controls though. You'll have to step up to the 3 for that, and the 3 has automatic climate, heated seats and heated steering wheel, and keyless entry. And the GT Line S model being the top of the range, that's around 18 grand to start with, comes with blind spot monitors, also a sunroof, the option for the faster engine, and also all of the features of the 3 model below it. Here's where things get a little bit shaky though. Now they used to do a really nice turbo 3-cylinder engine for the Picanto, and they still do it in the Hyundai i10, but for some reason that has been shunned for this new model. Now unfortunately the only one you can buy now is a 1-litre 3-cylinder that's naturally aspirated, only 62 horsepower. Yeah, that's right, all models devoid of snail, and they have become the snail as a result. This model is 0 to 60 in 15.4 seconds, and that's for the 5-speed manual. There's also a 5-speed automated manual, which is dreadful, by the way, and that's 18.2 seconds to 60, making it one of the slowest cars you can buy new today. In the top trim, you do have the option of a 1.2-litre 4-cylinder, which definitely has a bit more grunt, 74 horsepower. But still, 13.1 seconds to 60 in the standard manual, and 16.5 seconds in the automated manual. Still not good at all, and it's such a shame they've done away with that lovely peppy turbo, especially as you can still buy it on the current Hyundai. Just seems like a really odd decision. I understand that these are probably more reliable and some of the consumers that buy these probably don't care that much, but it's just so slow by today's standards. So you're looking at a combined MPG figure of between 52 and 54 on all models. But to be honest with you, I haven't been achieving that because I've been kind of pushing it quite hard to get the performance out of it. I've been averaging kind of low to mid 40s. The Aygo X is similarly slow, but the Dacia Sandero even, which is a much larger car for a very similar price, actually has a 1-litre turbo option with 90 brake horsepower, which is quite peppy. So with that bit out of the way, let's talk about the styling of the new Picanto. I actually think it's really quite good as an upgrade. Like, the previous one does look a little bit dated now, and this one is a massive leap forward in terms of how modern it looks. With this particular trim, I've got the LED light bar front and back, and they do look really nice, really modern. That front one is almost kind of a jewellery-like aesthetic to it. For a cheap car, and you know, something so small, it really does look like it's been designed well. I think it's particularly set off by this adventurous green paint job. That's not me calling it adventurous green, by the way, that's actually its name. And I think it really sets it off. It's like a kind of a pastel-y colour, like, I don't know how to describe it, like a pistachio or something. It's quite modern, and I think it's really good looking. It's just a really modern colour palette, and I really enjoy it. And I think the styling upgrades they've made both to the front and the rear, especially on this GT line trim, it has that kind of diffuser at the back and the gloss black accents, the nice alloy wheels. I think overall it's quite a handsome little thing. Someone said to me before it looks a bit like a Lego car, and I can kind of see where they're coming from. But yeah, even though it's tiny, it's quite stylish, and I think people will quite enjoy the upgrade. It definitely just looks that little bit sharper than the previous model, and I think definitely sets it apart from its key rivals. I think it probably looks the most modern out of all of them, and it definitely looks a little bit more upmarket than a Hyundai i10, I believe. But why, when making it look pretty, did they decide to kill the turbo model? Anyway, let me stop moaning about that and we'll carry on talking about the car itself. Step inside and things are fairly similar to the previous model, to be honest, but that's not to say that it's a bad car. Now on this GT line model, as I say, it's kind of middle of the road in terms of price, and it still has manual climate control, which is a little bit disappointing, but of course you've got physical controls for everything, and the layout is quite good. Now the steering wheel is quite nice. The only thing I don't like about it is that the media controls are on the left hand side, which interferes with your gear shift, but it's not the end of the world. When you change things like the lights, it comes up on the dash, which is welcome because it means you know what you're doing. It's not just kind of guesswork. And overall, material quality is okay. You'd expect it to be cheap, and it is. Of course, you've got scratchy plastics even up here, but you do have some soft touch materials on the door here with some contrast stitching, and you've got some contrast leather here. As I say, it's artificial leather, so this is a kind of vegan leather material, but it's quite soft and it's quite comfortable. And these seats, even, there's not a whole lot of adjustability with them. You can kind of go up and down. It's all manual, slide forward and back and that kind of thing. But it's acceptable, you know, like it's passable for what it is, and I don't really see it being too much of a problem for your day to day. The only thing I would say that is a key issue for me in here at 6 foot is the driving position. Now, kind of like sitting back where I am, my legs are comfortable at this point, but there is adjustment for height, but not telescopic adjustment on the steering wheel. So there's no rake, so I can't pull it towards me, so I am kind of sitting stretched out like this, which is uncomfortable on long journeys, unfortunately. But overall in here, it's kind of what you expect it to be. I do think it's a little bit cheeky how you can't get the vanity mirror on the lower end models that has the kind of the nice lights that I've got on this one here. But, you know, that's kind of nitpicking. If they can do that to keep the cost down, then sure, why not? The materials on the dash, again, scratchy plastics and scratchy plastics down here. There's a bit of wobble in the center console, but overall build quality is kind of okay. But for the class of car it is, like, you can't expect too much. The fact that there's a decent sized screen here, which is bright and a decent resolution, you know, that's a key thing to start with. And then I've also got this display in front of me, which kind of imitates a full display. It's not, it's just got some graphics on the either side with the digital dials, and it's just got a 4.2-inch driver's display in the middle, which displays your basic trip information and a few other bits and bobs, including like your CarPlay song or like a navigation direction or whatever. It's not very comprehensive, but it blends in nicely. And it is a matte display as well, and I'm in really awkward lighting at the moment. You probably noticed the camera flashing because it's kind of towards the end of the day. I'm on a summer's day here, and it's really readable. Like, everything is bright and easy to read, even in these direct sunlight conditions. So top marks for the display quality in here, especially at the price point. So I'm a massive fan of what they've done with the outside. Even though it's not my cup of tea, I think buyers will really enjoy it. And inside, whilst it's not drastically different, for a cheaper car, it all looks and feels acceptable. The fact that I've got automatic headlights and that kind of thing, that's all standard, that's great. The reversing camera, it is like appallingly low resolution, but it gets the job done. Like, it's enough for you to understand how to use it, and it's not fancy, but it just works. And yeah, like, the layout is just acceptable. I've got some physical buttons for the media controls and stuff like that as well, and volume and changing the station. And also you've got the Kia Star buttons, which you can program to something of your choosing, which is really useful. You've got different drive profiles on there, so if you share the car, that's nice and easy. And the nice gimmicks that Kia throw in, like voice memos and a quiet mode that shuts off the rear speakers if you've got kids asleep in the back. Little things like that, just nice quality of life things. What's also good is the driver assist stuff. So no blind spot monitoring on this lower end model, but what I do have is a one-touch automatic steering assist for the motorway, which I absolutely love on all the Kia Hyundai products. You just literally just press it and the car will start steering itself in lane. Works really well on the motorway for longer journeys. And also you've got lane keep assist, which kind of tugs you back into lane when necessary and gives you an audible beep and a vibration. It's not quite as intrusive as some of their older versions as well. You've got front assist for collisions, but again, nothing is too intrusive, and I've also got traffic sign recognition on this one too. The actual infotainment system is fairly responsive, as it is on all of these, and it gets the job done. You've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto as standard. They are wired, but I'm perfectly happy with that, and I've been using Apple CarPlay for the majority of stuff anyway. You've also got some EQ adjustment for your stereo. It's not the best quality in the world, I'll be honest with you. Like, there is some distortion with the kind of the bass side of things in here, especially when you really crank things, but you know, it's quite a basic system and it does get the job done. It's just that it's probably not quite as good as some of the optional ones that you might get in other cars. I've got a high wattage outlet as well, and I've also got USB-C and USB-A charging. It is a little bit of a shame that I don't have a wireless charger in here. That's reserved for the higher end model, but you know, there's still a little bit of space there, and there's a cubby in the center here, a little bit of storage space here and there. You've got 2 cup holders, and there's a space in the door pocket for a bottle, which is quite practical. Overall, you can't complain too much, to be fair. You know, the visibility is okay. There's a big C-pillar, but it's a small boxy car, and with that reverse camera, you really can't go wrong. What did impress me is the space in the back. Now, this is quite a tall boxy car, so think like Suzuki Wagon R Plus, something like that. You know, I've got lots of headroom in here, even at 6 foot in a higher driving position, and I can actually just about squeeze in behind myself as well, although it is tight on my legs. But if you move the seat a little bit forward, I can sit behind there just fine, and I've got loads of headroom. Legroom is scarce and not much thigh support, but I do have quite long legs, and yeah, it's just not it's not really too bad. Like I can't say that I'm too disappointed with it. I was pleasantly surprised, and whilst it wouldn't be great for longer journeys, it's perfectly acceptable for kind of average use. There's not much of a transmission hump in the middle either, so you could get someone sitting there, although of course 3 adults are going to be cramped. You've got ISOFIX points back there and a few other practicalities, even rear charging on this model. And in the boot, things are pretty practical too. With the seats folded down, it's a really usable space. Of course, it's not very big, but it is quite square, and loading it can be quite easy. You've got an adjustable boot floor as well, so you've got a little bit of extra space and some tie hooks. One thing to bear in mind though is that the Suzuki Ignis does have sliding rear seats, so they go forward and back and recline a little bit like in the more expensive SUVs, so you might get a bit more practicality there, and it's a higher vehicle. Toyota Aygo X, a little bit higher and easily accessible maybe, and the Dacia Sandero, similar price and much roomier inside. I mean, you're not exactly going to fit a St Bernard in it, but it will do for some shopping or a couple of suitcases. Another thing to potentially bear in mind is that the previous model Picanto had a 3-star safety rating, so probably not the best if you're kind of really concerned about that from a family point of view. Maybe something a little bit larger might suit you better. Particular highlights for me are the infotainment being easy to use and just having those extra quirks and features baked in. The seats are being of reasonable quality, especially with this artificial leather, and also just kind of the tech that's included as standard. If you were to get a good discount on the top of the range GT Line S or a 3 model with like the heated seats, heated steering wheel and all that stuff as well, I think that would be a bit of a bargain as a little runaround. Just do a little U-turn here. Decent little turning circle. Right, what I'm going to do now is just chuck it down some little country roads and show how nippy this thing is. Now, the handling itself I find quite enticing. It kind of encourages you to chuck it around a little bit like a little go-kart, and yeah, it's just pleasant. Like the previous Picanto, I said the same thing. You know, I can chuck it in here. The car is very keen. The gear change is really nice actually. I've got the 5-speed manual here, and it's got like a really satisfying feel to it. You know, I can kick it down a gear, and yeah, it's just got a really satisfying gear change to it. The throw isn't too bad either. It's just a really nice action to use, and the clutch feels a little bit heavier and more robust than on the previous model as well, which is really nice because I found that it sometimes can be too light on these cars, and this is a little bit, it just feels like a little bit more of a reassuring action in the pedal underneath my foot, which I'm pleased about. Now, the steering, there isn't an awful lot of feel to it, to be honest with you, but that's at the cost of it being light, and obviously it being light is probably what you want really on a car like this, being a little city car, easy to manoeuvre, easy to park. The wheelbase is interesting because the wheels are really far towards the corner of the car, so you can kind of feel exactly what everything's doing, but it does feel a little bit wobbly on the motorway at higher speeds. But again, the automatic steering assist can kind of help with that, and lane keep and stuff like that, so it's not too much of a big deal, but it's just something to bear in mind. Obviously, being a smaller, lighter car anyway, it's kind of going to be the case. But yeah, the handling itself is all right. There's not much in the way of body roll. It feels pretty nimble, and it's just quite fun to play around with. It's a shame you don't get a little bit more steering feel through, like something like a, you know, a full Fiesta or a full Puma or something like that, but those are much more expensive cars. The main thing that I'm impressed with is just the gear change action. It just feels really nice to play around with. I'm just going to do an emergency stop from 40 miles an hour and see what the brakes do. Well, braking action is quite good, as you can see. Overall brake feel isn't too bad either. You kind of expect them to get a little bit spongy on a car like this, but they're quite reassuring. Overall, a fun little car to zip around in. However, the real letdown, I think, for me is just the engines. This one is slow, and I mean it is slow by any standard, like not just because I drive faster cars. Like, it's one of the slowest cars you can buy new, and it really shows. And a word of warning, I would avoid the automatic, to be honest, because it's one of those kind of old-fashioned automated manuals, and it feels like you're kind of in the car with a learner driver who doesn't quite get to grips with the clutch yet. It's just a bit sloppy and rubbish. So if you're going to buy one of these, be prepared to go for the manual. I've really enjoyed the turbo option on the previous gen and on the Hyundai i10. It's a really nippy little thing, and to be fair, this still has that nice 3-cylinder thrum and it's still kind of peppy around low speeds. But as soon as you really kind of get up there, it's not, you know, I mean, I'm going up a hill here now, so let me just clear this corner and then I'll give it some beans and we'll see what it can do. So I'm doing 20 mile an hour, I'm in second gear. My foot's on the floor. I'll tell you when we're at 30. There's 30, and that was foot in the carpet in second. It's just a little bit too slow for a modern car. And as you can hear, you do have to wring it out to get the best out of it as well. It just becomes a little bit hopeless when you're trying to pull out of a junction a bit too quickly and things like that. Right, let's do 0 to 60 full send. There we go. Oh dear. I actually think in a world of electric cars where things have instant power and torque, and you know, cars have just really come on in the last few years, having this little power is almost downright dangerous in some situations. And on a road like this, you do notice that the suspension is a little bit firm as well. Because I'm having to wring it out quite a lot, and not to drive like an idiot, but just to kind of get out of junctions and do things like that, it does mean that it does hit the economy. So I've been averaging, as I mentioned before, around sort of like 44 miles per gallon as opposed to the quoted 54. So realistically, when I consider that I can get low 30s in my Audi that has 4 times the power of this car and a nice automatic gearbox, it kind of becomes a little bit of an annoyance, really. Like pulling out of here, like, I'm not even at 30 yet. And of course, the 4-cylinder one definitely has that little bit more oomph. But when you can go and get a Hyundai i10, which is kind of a slightly better quality car with the turbo engine still, it's hard to justify the pretty looks and the extra little features of this one. Which is a shame, because I do think that this is a nice little city car for a lot of people. Not my cup of tea, but I can see the appeal, and it is cheap enough that it's worth a look as a new buy. But I just think it's a real shame that it's not a little bit quicker, or it doesn't offer maybe a little hybrid option like they do in Toyotas and things like that. Also, it's worth considering the Dacia Sandero, I think, just on the basis that you get a turbo option and it's a more spacious car at a similar price. It's not going to be as feature rich as this one in terms of its tech and how modern it is, but if you're just looking for something practical and easy to run around, might be an option. That being said though, I do like the new Picanto, and if I was literally just pottering about in town all the time, I think I wouldn't be opposed to the little engine choices. And I do like the thrummy 3-cylinder, there's something always really fun about those. And I particularly like the manual gearbox in this one. Overall, as a package, it is really good. I just think the icing on the cake would have been that turbo option still being available. But do you know what? If you are looking for a small city car, then it's definitely worth checking this out, I believe. I think the other features and the overall package does make up for it. And not to mention Kia's 7-year, 100,000 mile warranty. That's pretty class leading, right? So thank you guys for watching. Thank you once again to Kia for sending me out the car, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.